Good morning. I am the Reverend Linda Goonevardene, representing the Mental Health Support and Action Group. Along with Paul McGinnes, I co-facilitate our monthly meetings. The MHSAG meetings are for people who are living with mental health issues and caregivers who love and support them. Sometimes this is the same person. In my weekday ministry, I'm a counselor with Reedlewood Addiction and Family Services, where I provide support and psychoeducation to family members whose loved ones are experiencing substance use and/or behavioral disorders. The role of the caregiver is minimized, silenced, and disregarded by medical, political, and legal systems too frequently. Today, we want to be reminded of the critical role of caregiving in supporting the people in our society who are unable to take care of themselves, whether it is with physical and/or mental illness. Today, 3 members of our congregation have volunteered to participate in today's panel: Jan Glide, Mary Lela and Mo Gabe. We will begin with introductions, then I will ask 3 questions, and our esteemed panelists will answer them. Then we are looking forward to questions from the audience, which we will answer to the best of our ability. Finally, we will conclude with my brief closing remarks. I'm going to start off by introducing Mary Lela. She is a member of the First Unitarian Congregation since the 1970s. In various capacities, she can see where she has always been a caregiver, a sort of heart of hearts, reaction to the changing needs of others. As her husband George is now in St. Pat's long-term care residence, her caregiving role is to accept the help of others, for she is not able to give him the kind of care he needs. The adjustment to caring for a loved one who will not get well is difficult. Mo, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mo Gabe, an official Unitarian Universalist since 2005, but in spirit many years before that. Since 2009, in various capacities, I have been a caregiver for my long-term partner, Eric, until his death last year, just before the pandemic arrived in Ottawa. I've had experience in daily hospital visiting, full-time home care nursing duties, and in accompanying my physically challenged partner for several years on his journey through debilitating illness until the moment he died. In the 20 years before that time, I worked at the Sexual Assault Support Center of Ottawa to support women who had experienced violence.
Thank you, Mo. Jan, you're next.
Jan Glide here. A member since 1996. I sing in 2 of our choirs, have served as a lay chaplain, as a member of the stewardship team, as a regular on the hospitality team, and currently participate in the welcome and membership and nominations teams. Growing up during and in post-war Britain, we didn't say caregiving. Looking after the little kids and sick relatives in the family was just what happened. At one point, every room in our house was a bedroom. So newly widowed Auntie Ivy and her 2 little girls, plus Auntie Violet, who was dying of TB, could live with us and be cared for by Mum. I knew that looking after one another was what we were here for. It just seemed obvious to take on caring for Jack when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2011. We were introduced here and had been together since 2004. He died in 2017.
Thank you, Jan. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, what would you tell yourself at the beginning of your caregiving experiences if you could go back in time?
It means that you must accept the changes in your life.
Mhm.
You have total responsibility for the person you're caring for now. It's not like early in life where you just assumed everything would be all right at the end of whatever you were doing to help somebody through a crisis.
Mhm.
And to seek the support of other people is extremely important. You can't do it alone. Accept the help that is offered and tell the world where you stand. You can't just sit by and people wonder why you're not smiling one day or feeling grumpy. And you should not really have any regrets. You're doing the best you can. And we need all the love, tolerance, and compassion that we can draw on to help our caregiving process with the people that we have such a loving, caring life with. I think that's all for that right now.
Thank you, Mary Lela.
I would tell myself, be more assertive toward the system, which is meant to help you. When Eric left hospital, the Ontario home healthcare system people were willing to offer advice, very willing to offer advice, but not any hands-on help, except for some physiotherapy for Eric. The next one I already knew, make time for yourself. I used to swim for exercise and relaxation and meditate. Looking back, I would say to myself, you didn't arrange for any fun activities for yourself. However, it is hard to have fun when you are very, very tired. I would tell myself you will need to be versatile and able to cope with change. I would say, don't be tempted to nag, he's doing the best he can. I would also say there will be compensations. For example, Eric and I experienced a growth in intimacy and tenderness. There were many opportunities to show love to each other, extra acts of kindness on my part, and of expressing appreciation from him.
Thank you, Mo.
I would tell myself to get to know what resources and services are out there. I really didn't know. Learn about the disease and what to expect of its progression. Stay connected with nearest and dearest and keep them in the loop. He's still Jack, but what he says and does now is linked to Alzheimer's. It's unpredictable. He won't remember what you say. He'll remember how you make him feel. You're going to be at the receiving end of some odd behavior and talk, and not just from Jack. Don't take it personally. Get advice from those who have experience and expertise. Thank you, staff at Unitarian House. Don't be shy about asking for help. Help will be offered. Figure out how to use it. This will take up most of your brain space. You will feel emotionally raw and exhausted. So look after your health and keep on singing. Keep Jack involved in routine chores and fun activities for as long as possible. You're going to make mistakes. Don't wallow. Figure out how to manage yourself. This could go on for years. Pace yourself. The hardest part will be watching Jack fade away. It's a very long goodbye and grief a constant. This is a terminal disease and the end can come in a variety of ways. Know when to begin palliative care and when to let go.
Thanks so much, Jan. Before we move on to the second question, I just want to thank you for such heartfelt and profound responses. It reminds me of some of the work that I do with family members at Rita Wood, and I'll be touching on that a bit at the end. So let's go to question number 2, unless anybody else needed to add anything. We're good, panel members? Yep. Okay. Question number 2, what have you learned about yourself and the world through your caregiving experiences? Mary Lela.
I think that I have realized that all we have is the now, but it's always changing.
Yeah.
There are many unexpected adjustments to my life. And we have to be aware of those and not fight them. And it's my understanding of my own strengths and resilience has come forth. And many of the caregivers, like myself, are older ourselves, and we have our own health concerns that we have to be aware of, take care of, and accommodate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good points. Thank you, Mary Lela.
I've learned that I'm strong, I'm patient most of the time, I'm caring, I try to solve problems. I already knew that I was a good listener, but new depths of listening have been plumbed. What have I learned about the world? In this caregiving journey, especially in the hospital, I've met many exceptional people. ICU nurses and doctors were a real eye-opener to me. They combined a great deal of technical knowledge with a deep concern for the people they were helping. Family were a huge source of strength and comfort, especially at the really difficult times, and friends helped too. Where I feel the health system in Ontario let me down was when Eric first came home from hospital. For many months, he required tube feeding, many types of medication, also into different tubes, and other types of care. Our nights were very disturbed. I was the only other person in the house, and I had to become a full-time nurse, 24/7. At the same time, I had to do all the additional regular duties of homemaking, care for a large garden, and I had to learn to do pool maintenance, all whilst I was in my mid-70s. I still think of this as the most challenging time of my life, and I'm sure led to our decision to move to Unitarian House as soon as possible, a decision that I've never regretted.
Thank you, Mo. Jan, you're next.
Life truly is about caring for and about one another, sick or not, and universally. I have limitations. I had to dig deep to find courage and endurance. Jack taught me 3 important things: to live in the moment, because that's all he had, go slow to stay in step with him, and make the most of everyday pleasures. I also learned that I was not as patient as I would have liked to have thought. There were quite a few head-banging episodes in the bathroom, mine, not Jack's, and I needed to get a grip. So when I reached the end of my rope, I would go to my office, shut the door, and sing along to YouTube at the top of my lungs till I got a second wind. I also got an extra high note. From the 2 years that Jack lived at Grace Manor long-term care home, I learned that Alzheimer's or any devastating disease doesn't discriminate for gender, race, religion, social status, or education. It's a great equalizer and really intensified my sense of belonging to the human family. I found connection with other caregivers, professional, family, and volunteers who were from around the world. I came through the experience stronger, more grateful than ever to be alive and healthy, and more keenly aware of how much we all have in common in this world, and of both our fragility and our resilience.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, everyone. Such wonderful responses to the second question. And we'll move on to the last question. How has being a Unitarian Universalist impacted your caregiving? Mary Lela.
I think it has been the people that we meet, get help from, and we can draw on them for a nod here and there, the loving care. And when George was in the Civic at one point, Ellen Bell came wheeling into this very tiny room and said, "Here I am." And it was great. It made me feel so joyful to have that little bit of extra attention, somebody that understood. So, you know, Alex Campbell here and Mo and Jan have all been a big help, but they're a group of people that you feel comfortable with and don't mind sharing. It's the inherent worth and dignity of every person that's being considered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Lela. Go ahead, Mo.
The weekly service has been part of my self-care. Because of location, I needed to switch from attending First U to the fellowship. And I enjoyed learning about how a smaller lay-led congregation does UU. People at both congregations were very supportive during the time of acute danger and the first very difficult time of home caregiving. I moved back to First U when Eric and I moved into Unitarian House in 2016. Unitarian Universalist principles have given me a framework or words to explain much of what I believe is important in life. The principles, which name what I've dealt with regularly in caregiving, are those which refer to the inherent worth and dignity of every person. For example, being an advocate for somebody in both everyday issues and in matters of life and death. Also, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth, and the right of conscience, and the democratic process. Another organization, AA, not UU, says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That power can be a God of our understanding, or the power of the community which supports us. Here in Unitarian House, I live community every day, as I'm sure my co-participants would agree. In First U or the fellowship, we are supported by the congregational community. Our families, even if far-flung, are also our supporting community. I remember Eric's face when in ICU, he saw the card which arrived from the congregation. His eyes lit up "Oh," he said, "they've all signed it." Unitarian Universalism is the people, not the buildings. My community gives me the added strength I need.
Thank you, Mo. Go ahead, Jan.
Belonging to this congregation has been my salvation. Simple as that. It's been my life raft. This is where I found affirmation and trust after a lifetime of feeling insecure. I found something like a sense of purpose, shelved the search for meaning in favor of just being in awe of the mystery and miracle of existence. This is where I found a spiritual home and one of the loves of my life, two if you count singing. Altogether, it was a good foundation for tackling the challenges of caregiving. Caring for someone who's living with Alzheimer's is lonely, but I didn't feel isolated, as is the case for so many caregivers, because I always had the feeling that the congregation was right there behind me to love me and support me. Well, both of us. Ditto at Unitarian House. None of it was easy and it wasn't tidy, but for reasons I don't yet understand, it felt like a privilege to be Jack's care partner.
Thank you, Jan. Wow. There's a lot to think about there. Mo, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
What strikes me is we're saying the same things in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We've come to that meeting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What really struck me about what you both said was about tenderness. I came through this feeling really tender towards the whole world. And what I received at Unitarian House and at the church was, I found other people were kind of tender with both Jack and me. And it was a salve.
Yeah. Yeah, it speaks to the value and the beauty of community, right? The being able to feel connected and belonging, a sense of place, a sense of knowing that people are aware of who we are and what we're up to, and are beside us along the journey. Well, when we were planning this, we were quite looking forward to questions from the other people who are with us today. So I don't know if Margaret, if you've gotten any questions, or if people are have a comment or question. Some of you may also be caregivers or have been caregivers and might want to share a bit of that. We're going to open up the floor, and we look forward to interacting with you.
Yes, there are some questions.
Oh, wonderful.
And thank you so much, everyone, because I've learned a lot. And I'd like to apologize for not putting my camera on everybody, but it makes my line is iffy today. So one of the first questions is, how has your experience as a caregiver informed the type of care you would like to receive as the end of your life approaches?
Great question. Should we go in our usual order, or Mo, is your hand up?
Well, I was thinking, once I'd come to Unitarian House and saw that my dreams for the place had been more than met, and I know how it works here more now, my hope has always been to die in my bed here, not to have to go anywhere else. Although I do recognize from Eric's death that a short time in hospital doesn't really affect that very much. the rest of the last part of his life was lived here, essentially.
Mhm.
I'm well aware of the level of care you can have as you, if needed, move to the second floor here,
Mhm.
and the nursing and the kind of people that are there. I, along with both of my co-participants here, take shifts on the front desk, and we see the care and love that's given there.
Mm.
So that's my hope.
Mo's right on about what I'm sure I feel also. At probably the oldest one here, and not knowing if I will die first or if George will die first makes a difference in how I approach life in general.
Mm.
There is the gentleness of just dying in bed, or having other people having to stew over you. And I just want it to be gentle. I don't want it to linger. And the care that we can receive here on the second floor is a real blessing. And to have that as an option is very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Lela. Jan?
This is something I thought about a lot. I just turned 80, and it's sort of one step closer to the other shore.
Mm.
My family is all very far away in the US and in England. And I have been really toying with the idea that if the worst happens, I would submit to going into long-term care, because there, I don't have family who could provide that care.
Mhm.
I also hope that I will go gently, and that I will be able to move to the second floor of
Mhm.
Unitarian House if the worst doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And I'm actually in the process of trying to get something down on paper so that everybody knows
What you want.
where I stand.
Yes, that makes sense.
Jan is the baby of us.
Hmm?
Jan is the baby of us.
Dance the baby.
Yes.
Okay. Mary Lela, you wanted to say something else?
Long-term care facilities are, for the most part, very good, and they try their best, but they need a lot of help in
Yeah.
resources and facilities. And one of the things that I need from the system is good bus service to get to these facilities. There's
Yeah.
nothing at St. Pat's.
Mm.
At some point, at approaching 90 in a year and a half, I'll have to give up driving. And then what do I do? Taxi cabs?
Yeah.
But it's, I'm free now, but I won't be forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all interconnected, right? The long-term healthcare system, the transportation system, the medical system, the hospitals, everything is interconnected, and they all have an impact on each other. Thank you for that. Do we have another question, Margaret?
Yes, we do.
Nice to see you.
How did you find your feelings of love towards your partner change as the illness progressed?
Oh, I think the grieving process is a long, ongoing thought that you have with everything that you do. I've become more tolerant and tender and forgiving with anything that is said or done by George. It's I think the love that I get from the family has helped also. I have two sons close by that are very helpful. My daughter's in PEI and another son in Vancouver, but they still are tender and understand my position and help in whatever way they can. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Lela. Anything you want to add, Mo or Jan?
Yes, I think the nature of our love, at least as we demonstrated it, changed, Eric and I. I think it's not that we weren't equal partners, we were all along, but it changed. It's subtle because you don't want it to become a parent-child relationship if you can help it.
Yeah.
I recognize there's a different element if you're dealing with dementia, and I wasn't. So that was something that was helpful for me and Eric. But I think it changed because of the caregiving role. Mine was a tenderness towards a giving of myself, and Eric had to learn, because there was nothing else he could do, to accept. I think that must be very hard. I've not had to do it myself very much yet. And I think that must be very hard, that process of acceptance. And I think his had to become more that.
Yeah, good point.
Jack's and mine was a fairly new love. We were match made by Marlene Campbell in 2004. And there followed the best 3 years of my life when Jack made up for an awful lot of not such great stuff that I had experienced in life. I did very much try to hang on to the fact that he was my husband. And I really worked at being respectful, because it would have been easy to slip into telling him what to do rather than asking him what he wanted to do. It was, my feelings for him were very tender. And grieving for him was a constant. I used to set time aside actually for grieving. I howled, shower. It was a different kind of love, the caregiving, but really unavoidable, I think, but still love.
Yeah. Yes, Mo, I see your hand is up.
I'd like to add too that, and I hadn't thought of it as a form of love before, strangely enough, but I developed a great admiration for Eric in how he could still crack jokes. Even in those last 4 days in hospital, he could still crack jokes. And I had great admiration. Day after day, he did not grumble about the fact that he had to breathe twice as fast as I did to give himself enough oxygen. And that's exhausting. And I didn't really appreciate that so much at the time because I was too busy being a caregiver. But I came to see afterwards a great deal of admiration had developed in me for that, for seeing what he endured without grumbling, and for his humor, his sense of humor.
Yeah, that
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
I have another question. Can you speak, please, about your recovery from caregiving?
I think there will be a letdown, a release of the responsibilities that you've had for quite a while. I don't have any regrets for what's happened. I've accepted it, and I will just go on with the things that are most important in my life. We've done what we could do for George in this case. I'll just look back on it as a tremendous growth experience and accept those people around me with joy that have helped along the way.
Mm. Thank you,
Mary Lela was one of those people for me.
Mm.
When Eric was in hospital at the very end, and it was the hospital she used to work in earlier in her life, she turned up just to see if there was anything I or the family needed. And we had some very good conversations. My daughter from Vermont did in the cafeteria with you,
Yes,
Mary Lela,
yes.
one day.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah, and what was the original question? Oh, how do we cope with
Recover.
the caregiving? Yeah.
Recovery from caregiving.
Recovery from caregiving. I do know I felt tremendous relief when the time of caregiving was over. And I also know that my recovery since then has been very clouded by a spiritual experience I had just after Eric died, where I felt that I'd had a vision of him and that he came to me. I wasn't expecting that. I had read of such things, and it was a tremendous grace, I feel. And it certainly impacted not feeling sad for a long, long time, except occasional moments. Those were when I woke up and thought he was there and he wasn't. That was a surprise each time and a shock that he wasn't. And I don't know, I'm drying up, I think. Yeah, it's a process. I feel I'm still learning to recover from caregiving. And yet it's a good learning experience too.
Thank you, Mo. Jan?
Like you, Mo, when Jack actually died, the feeling of relief was overwhelming because I didn't have to watch Jack disappearing anymore. He died of starvation. His swallow reflex died. And with Alzheimer's, it can be a variety of ways. I was just thankful that it wasn't aspiration, where he then got pneumonia. And I don't think I have ever really wanted to recover as revitalize. I'm not sure what I'm saying here.
I'm hearing a shift, that life has shifted for you.
Yeah.
And so it's not about recovering from the caregiving, but maybe a shifting into a different way of living.
Yeah. With, I have to say, our Unitarian principles front and center. Really, I think I deepened my spirituality, caregiving, and I'm still sort of riding the wave, as it were, and still growing, still reflecting on everything, and doing a fair bit of writing as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have one last question. Feel free to submit some more, everybody. And it is, when you're in the throes of caregiving and one of us says, hello, how are you? When we say, how are you doing? Or how is your partner doing? Is that helpful? Or do you hate giving news on your partner every day? Or what's the most helpful thing that we can do?
When I receive questions like that, I'm somewhat hesitant to go into details. They're being polite, and I accept that as interest. There are, well, Mo and Alex, I can go into details if I want to. I feel free with some people. even some family members. But I think it's such a common use of the word, how do you feel, that we don't want to elaborate too much about it. We're fine, and we are fine, but we don't want to be crying on their shoulders.
Mm.
And I accept the interest and the thought that is given with the question more than anything else.
Mhm.
So it's all right to ask, how are you? You may get a full blast of information, or you may just get a nod of, okay.
I think I just second what Mary Lela has said. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, we should remember what Marianne Wood says. Fine, unless you want the details. I actually had the choirs behind me because I got asked constantly how was Jack, and I knew that everybody was concerned about him. People had known him longer than they'd known me.
Mm.
And so I asked the choir, I would give the choir updates and say, and just spread the word. And I kind of liked it. It was refreshing when somebody said, how you doing?
Mm.
And I didn't want to give details, but I could then say, well, this has been a good day, or this day is a bit of a challenge. And I need to mention Three Rivers. We're a small choir, we're all women. And Three Rivers really did feel like my life raft. It was my time to, well, the songs that we sang were so empowering. And I got to know everybody really well. But how are you doing was a good one for me.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you. That's it for questions that have been submitted. Unless there's something out there. No, I don't see any more. I don't know, I'll pass it over to you, Linda.
Okay. Well, I had some closing words prepared, and I'm conscious it's a full day. We have a service this morning, and this afternoon, I assume some of you may be attending the memorial service for John Marsh. So I'm not going to linger. I'm going to just go ahead with my closing words. First, I want to start off by thanking our three panelists, Jan Glide, Mary Lela Argus, and Mo Gabe, for their honesty, their courage, their caring, and their wisdom. It's funny, we talked earlier about sometimes when I emailed them, I would call them the wise ones. And they weren't always comfortable with that, but I think we heard so much wisdom this morning. Maybe we never reached that point of I am completely wise, but certainly the wisdom is there for the asking, and it's so wonderful that you were able to share all of that with us. I wanted to thank Paul McGinnes because he did all the work of recruiting our wonderful speakers, filling out the paperwork, which I hate doing paperwork, and he did all the emails and phone calls. So I just wanted to thank him because he really made this start to gel. And his energy and his caring and his wisdom are invaluable. I wanted to thank the Zoom team this morning, making this forum possible during our pandemic. Maury, Barb, and Margaret, thank you so much for your technological expertise and your support and your caring. And then I wanted to end with a poem. So I don't normally like commercials. When I'm watching TV, I'm always muting them. But Petro-Canada had this commercial while we were preparing for this forum. And I just thought, oh my goodness, it's a poem about caregiving. And they actually have this Caregivers Foundation that they're supporting caregivers in various ways. But this is the poem that I have. One diagnosis, 72 appointments, 13 pulled muscles, 62 bathroom cries, 46 missed chances for fun, 213 uncontrollable laughs, one unbreakable bond. And I thought, what an interesting poem to sort of capture some of the moments that we experience when we have caregiving situations, whether it's with people who are ill and older, or whether it's people who are young and not ill, just needing caretaking, and anyone that we're engaging with, how it impacts us and the meanings that we find there. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you in particular for the three wise ones. I salute you, and so glad that we had this time together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I've just stopped one of the recordings, and the other is about to stop. Thank you, Linda and the panel.